The Boy Beyond the Window. The storm raged over the small village, as if the heavens themselves were warring against the earth. Rain lashed against the rooftops, the wind howled through the narrow alleyways, and thunder rolled like a warning drum. In the dim glow of the flickering oil lamp, a young boy pressed his forehead against the cold glass of a classroom window, his breath forming tiny clouds on the pane. His name was Elias, and he belonged to a world where hunger was his daily companion, where knowledge was a treasure he could only glimpse from the outside. Every morning, before the first light painted the horizon, Elias would gather his few belongings: a tattered notebook he had found discarded in the marketplace, a pencil worn down to its very tip, and make his way to the school where he had no right to belong. He would sit outside, unnoticed by most, listening intently to every word that escaped through the cracks in the wooden walls. Inside the classroom, a young woman named Lillian observed him from behind her desk. She was the teacher, new to this village, brought here by a calling stronger than mere duty. She had seen Elias many times, his silhouette barely visible in the golden morning light, his eyes filled with yearning that no child should ever carry. And so, on one fateful morning, she stepped outside, the cold air biting at her skin as she reached for his trembling hand. "Education is a right for everyone," she said, her voice firm yet kind, and she led him inside, offering him a seat at the back. The murmurs of the other students barely registered to Elias. All he knew was that his world had shifted. Days turned into weeks, and Elias flourished. He devoured knowledge like a starving man before a feast. But whispers crept through the village, doubts slithering into the minds of those who held tradition above change. The headmaster, a man of stern features and an unyielding heart, summoned Lillian. "A boy like him does not belong here," he said, his tone heavy with finality. But Lillian, undeterred, met his gaze with unwavering resolve. "A mind that seeks knowledge is never unworthy," she replied. The headmaster gave her one final look before dismissing her, but the battle was far from over. One evening, as Elias walked home, he felt a strange presence lingering in the air. The streets, usually bustling with evening chatter, were eerily silent. A shadow moved at the edge of his vision, and then a whisper: "You should know your place." The next thing he knew, darkness consumed him. When he awoke, he was lying in the forest, his body aching, his mind clouded. Someone had left him there, far from the village, far from everything he knew. Fear clawed at his chest, but then he remembered the stories Lillian had told him, stories of heroes who faced impossible odds. He was no hero, but he would not be defeated. Gathering his strength, he began the long journey back. By the time he stumbled into the village, dawn had begun to paint the sky with hues of gold and crimson. Lillian found him, her face pale with worry. She helped him inside, tending to his wounds, her hands gentle yet strong. "You are not alone," she whispered, and for the first time in his life, Elias believed it. But the shadows that had tried to silence him were not done. That night, the schoolhouse burned. Flames danced against the night sky, consuming the wooden walls, turning the place of dreams into ashes. The village watched in stunned silence, some mourning, others whispering that it was a sign, a warning. Lillian stood among them, her heart breaking. But then, a voice rose above the hush. "We will rebuild." It was Elias. And rebuild they did. With hands calloused from labor, with hearts fueled by determination, they built a school stronger than before. The village, once divided, came together. The headmaster, once rigid, watched as Elias took his place among the students once more. And when the school doors opened again, they opened not just for Elias, but for all who had ever stood outside, looking in. Years passed, and the boy beyond the window became the man at the front of the class. Elias, now a teacher himself, stood before his students, his eyes alight with the same fire that had once burned within him. And as he spoke, his voice carried not just knowledge, but hope. "Education is a right for everyone," he said, echoing the words that had once changed his life. And in that moment, the past, the present, and the future wove together into a story not just of one boy, but of all those who dared to dream beyond the glass.
Whispering echoes.